we have a contract with the Army Corps of Engineers out in Portland District, the Northwest, and they asked us to develop a physical appliance called, and we called it the HydroDCS, but the goal of it is to allow dam operators to have all the knowledge that they need to operate the dams accordingly, raising and lowering the gates. So I'll kind of go from a user's perspective right now and explain what this page is that we see and why it's important. A page like this is pretty much the whole purpose of the HydroDCS. So you have operators inside of the dam that are actually controlling the gates to raise and lower the elevation of the reservoir behind the dam. What this report is it's basically showing this operator maybe the entire watershed, all the surrounding bodies of water that they would be concerned with, and they need to know to operate these dams. So what we have here at the top, we have these are some dams. So let's say the operator is actually in this dam right now, the Lost Creek Dam. So what he wants to know immediately is what is the elevation of the water at the dam. In his own mind, he knows what the levels are, what they should be, what the maximum is. So this right here is the current elevation of the water at the dam, right? So it's got a timestamp of 7 o'clock. This is Pacific time. So it's 14 minutes old based on this. But he knows, okay, it's 1791. That's it, he would say this is within safe parameters. The maximum elevation is say 1824. So we have 33 feet of buffer, storage. This is the storage at the reservoir based on the elevation. It's just another metric that he can, go by. As the elevation goes up, obviously the storage or the volume of water, in other words, would go up as well. And then the battery, this is the battery voltage that is transmitting these values. So the other thing that he might find interesting is what are the bodies of water around him looking like? Because this, all he knows is the elevation now. So Applegate Dam right here, maybe this is a dam that's downstream, and he wants to know, he's looking at the weather. The weather says there's a rainfall coming the next 3 days. It's a pretty big storm. He says, okay, we have some good buffer here, but there's a town between Lost Creek and Applegate, and I would like to maybe release a little bit of water, lower this elevation to give me more buffer, so there's less likely going to be an issue or a flood. So he looks at Applegate. Oh, the elevation at Applegate is 1904. If this is too high, he might call Applegate and say, can you release some water? I need to release some water. So that's kind of how they're using this. You have rivers too. So these ones that end in O are rivers. You also have weather sites, but we don't have any on here. But the rivers are also important because you have a river like this, APPO. So this is Applegate outlet. So that's the outlet of the river leaving Applegate. You have the stage, which is the elevation of the river. So those values, if it's close to flooding, if it's low. They contextually know all these values and what they should be. They're experts on all of these. Then you have the flow, and then the water temp is less important, and then the voltage is kind of important for debugging possible issues. If the voltage is too low, that could be why a certain site isn't transmitting or has bad values. But they would look at all of these rivers because a lot of these rivers are upstream, meaning they flow into your reservoir, and are downstream, and certain towns are along these rivers. So using all of this knowledge, the dam operator can then make judgments on how to operate the dam. And this is just one page It's just, it has all the values, and that's in general the whole purpose of the HydroDCS, just to allow these dam operators to be able to operate the dams with this data. So it really helps them out. But we do have other reports. So if you can actually look at these reports. There's another one that was developed. Just what we were looking at here was this one. It's a template, and then there are lots of reports that are configurable using that template. This is a different one that the Army Corps uses specifically, and it's really for a specific dam and the regulators, so they can see all of the sites. That's kind of what this does. And what we have here is we kind of have some metadata. I had referenced the values that the operators know, that, these are important values. Once you get to this level, there's a problem. So we have these right here, which I can go over later, but you have minimum conservation pool and maximum conservation pool. So minimum conservation pool is basically when the reservoir is at its lowest. You can see the current pool elevation is 10 feet above it. So take it for what it is. Maximum conservation pool is, there's an issue when you get to this level. So they have what, 90-ish feet, a little bit less, 83 feet, I don't know. But all these right here, and you can see right here, we're below minimum conservation pool. So we've color coded this differently just to let them know. If it goes above this one, we color code it red. So we have the same things here with the rivers. These are bank full and flood stage. You can see all of the values are below bank full. Bank full is when this is really the maximum that we want. And then flood stage is when your water is actually going over the sides and flooding whatever is near it. So now that you kind of have an idea of how this works, you might be asking, okay, so the Army Corps, they already have all this data in their server. They already use it. They have APIs into there. So what's the point of this? Why have these? Why not just use the server? So that's a good question. And these are actually configured to get data two separate ways. The main way they get data is actually through the network. So they can essentially target their central server, and the HydroDCS or OpenDCS gets data from their central server. And that's their main way of doing it. But what happens if the network cable gets cut at the dam? Because the dam is a remote location and there's only one way in and out. And in fact, that happened because the fires out west burned up the cables. So in that case, you can't get to the central server. So these dams, they have receiver antennas or dishes to receive the satellite data. And the HydroDCS has the ability to collect data directly from the satellite feed. So it provides a redundant method. And obviously, if there's a fire, there could still be a flood, and the dam still needs to be operated properly. So having that critical data is very important. And the network does go down fairly frequently. So that's a really good reason to have these. I mean, that in itself is a reason to have the HydroDCS units at all of the dams. That's really the main purpose of it, is for the redundancy, so the operators can operate without issues. And then I guess as a separate note, this is actually a cloud-based version. So this is a HydroDCS that's running in the cloud, and it really looks no different than the physical unit at the dam. And I think that's the overall, that's pretty much the HydroDCS in a nutshell.